Hello everyone, I'm Pink Lemonade Guy, and welcome back to my channel. But if you're new here, then greetings. Today for you I have a Left 4 Dead iceberg. I made this one by combining 3 different icebergs into one massive iceberg, dividing into 9 tiers and 170 entries. If you don't know what an iceberg video is, then to summarize, it talks about niche topics, known facts, theories, and similar ideas about a certain piece of media, in this case, the Left 4 Dead games. As the iceberg goes down into the tiers, the topics get more creepy, mysterious, or just downright outrageous. I chose to do this specific iceberg since my 1 year anniversary for revamping my channel and playing games passed this July. The first game I uploaded was Left 4 Dead. Spoiler alert, I'll be talking about anthology fan animations, the Sacrifice comics, and other canon events and facts that take place in the Left 4 Dead universe, so this will be your last warning unless otherwise said. Happy anniversary to me, and with all that out of the way, let's dive into the Left 4 Dead Iceberg, Definitive Edition. Tier 1, the tip of the iceberg. Entry 1, Animal Zombies. This first entry is referring to, you guessed it, animal zombies. Rather, the lack thereof in-game. Animals still do exist in the games, as they can be seen and heard. Birds can be seen flying in the sky, and crows can be disturbed in the first game, which will lead to a horde being called. In the second game intro scene, dogs or some other canine can be heard howling in the distance. Furthermore, dead cattle can be seen throughout some levels, and there are also gator noises, but they are not seen. Interestingly enough, in Left 4 Dead 2, there is concept art for zombie pigs, which most likely would have appeared in the swamp levels. On top of that, there are sound files in the second game that hint at the possibility of a zombie dog enemy, and referring back to the howling in the second game's intro scene. However, no models or concept art can be found. Entry 2. The military killed the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors. This is referring to the grim possibility that after the Parish campaign in Left 4 Dead 2, which is the last canonical time we see the second group, the military killed Coach, Ellis, Nick, and Rochelle, rather than taking them to a safe haven. There is a chance that this was the ultimate fate that befell them, as all throughout the Parish you can find bodies of people that were not infected. Perhaps the military killed them because they were carriers, meaning that they were infected but immune to the symptoms and wouldn't turn into zombies. Another possibility is that, like the first group, they were taken to a military base and experimented on, but this time executed once they outlasted their usage, which the first group managed to escape by dumb luck. If Valve ever decides to continue the Left 4 Dead story, perhaps one day we'll find out what really happened to Coach, Ellis, Nick, and Rochelle. For now, it's ambiguous and entirely unknown. So if you think they lived, and if you think they died, they died. Entry 3. Left 4 Dead 2 and CSGO are in the same universe. This is a theory that Left 4 Dead and Counter-Strike Global Offense exist in the same universe, and even that CSGO is a prequel to Left 4 Dead. Allow me to summarize. The counter-terrorists of CSGO are trying to defuse a biological weapon, perhaps the one that started the green flu. Another piece of evidence is that CSGO has similar looking items and even areas, but these are probably just reused assets. And there is another theory about the Left 4 Dead universe, which I will get into later. Entry 4. The Green Flu. The Green Flu is the in-universe cause of the zombie apocalypse in Left 4 Dead. It is said that it's a strain of a previously unseen rabies pathogen. Its cure is undiscovered, and it makes the infected host homicidal and ravenous if they turn. According to the Left 4 Dead wiki, it affects women more, XX chromosomes, than men, XY chromosomes, hence why there are more male survivors than female ones. The only female survivors we know of in-game are Zoe, Rochelle, and Amanda Slater, while all of the others, including the escape personnel, are all male. Entry 5. Left 4 Dead 2 is a movie. This is referring to the theory that Left 4 Dead is not about survivors going through the zombie apocalypse, but rather, everything is a film set, and the survivors are just actors, and the zombies are all just costumes and makeup. This could also be the case due to the credits that play at the end of each campaign, which kind of lists everything as a scoreboard, and the survivors playing themselves. Entry 6, Left 4 Dead 3. There have been countless theories, rumors, and talk about a third Left 4 Dead game. Valve has vehemently denied the upcoming release of a Left 4 Dead 3, but the lack of official announcements of it still keeps people dreaming. But there's little to no evidence that a third game is currently being developed. There were supposed screenshots from 2013 that showed new characters and weapons, and the general consensus was that these were fake, or if it was real, cancelled. According to IGN, there was indeed a Left 4 Dead 3 planned, which would have been open world and took place in Morocco, but they decided that the technology at the time wouldn't be able to handle such a grand game. Another version was in development, which Valve codenamed Hot Dog. Just in case it got leaked, no one would know that it was a Left 4 Dead title. Unfortunately, this also never came into fruition, and even less information was known about it. Technically, there is a Left 4 Dead 3, but it is only exclusive to Japanese arcades. The characters are different and replace Coach, Rochelle, Nick, and Ellis, but the path they take is the exact same. It's not really Left 4 Dead 3, but I like to think that this third cast of survivors were just following the second group close behind, and we're just missing them. Entry 7, Scrap Special Infected. There are a couple Special Infected that never made it past beta testing, concept art stage, or even existing Special Infected that had different effects or appearances. I made a video on this about a year ago, but if you didn't watch it, here's the rundown. The Screamer, similar to the Witch, would just wander around and become startled by the survivors, then scream and run away, leading to a horde being called. The Meat Wall would have most likely been used as a final boss at the end of the campaigns. It would have been the tallest zombie, being around 20 feet tall. It carried 2 decapitated Common Infected in both hands. It would have taken Common Infected and eaten them to gain more power, possibly even fallen survivors. The Claws would have run over to the survivor and picked them up, then took them away to a secluded area and clawed at them until the survivor was rescued. There was concept art for an unnamed Special Infected of a severely decayed man with rats bursting out of his abdomen. The leaker was supposed to be similar to the Boomer and Spitter and planted itself into the ground and acted as a bomb. An unknown Special Infected that had an unknown power, and, as previously said, zombie pigs and zombie dogs. Entry 8. All the survivors are already infected. This is actually true. I mentioned it just before. All the survivors we follow, Bill, Lewis, Zoe, Francis, Ellis, Nick, Coach, and Rochelle, are all carriers, which means they all have the green flu but are immune to it. However, they can still infect other people just by being around them. This was shown around numerous campaigns when the chopper pilots that picked up the survivors in No Mercy and Dark Carnival became infected and were shown dead and crashed in the following campaigns, Crash Course and Swamp Fever. The first group of survivors found out about this during the Sacrifice comic, which took place in between Blood Harvest and the Sacrifice. It seemed that the second group is completely oblivious to this fact. Entry 9. Playable Versus as Witch. Playable Versus is a mode in Left 4 Dead where you can play as the survivors or Special Infected, doing various tasks. The Witch is the only Special Infected that is unplayable. It's understandable as it wouldn't make much sense to play as her. You either sit idle waiting for the survivors to approach, or wander super slowly, when the survivors could easily avoid you. Entry 10. New blog posts. This is most likely referring to the blog posts that are on the menu of Left 4 Dead 2. As of August 2024, all it says is welcome with a date I forgot. I think it might have been sometime in April or July, but I don't remember. When I first got the game, I remember it saying something about the new Coldstream campaign and advertising the Left 4 Dead 1 DLC. Entry 11, CEDA. CEDA, which stands for Civil Emergency and Defense Agency, is a fictional government organization in the Left 4 Dead universe. According to the Left 4 Dead wiki, they've been protecting American lives since 1988 from terrifying and unforeseen consequences of natural and man-made disasters. Unfortunately, it seems as the green flu overwhelmed them, and they're unreliable for rescue, as not a single surviving member can be found in all their evac centers, and they are overrun and abandoned. Because of their failures, the military took over all CEDA operations, and a couple of the survivors can sometimes be heard talking shit about them. Entry 12, Bill and Ellis's hats. Bill and Ellis are the two survivors who wear hats. Bill's hat, like the rest of his outfit, reflects his time serving as a soldier in Vietnam. His hat and the crest on it points to him being a Green Beret/Special Forces member, and the crest on it is kinda blurry, but as far as I can tell, it's the Diapresso Liber crest/patch. Ellis, his hat, had a tow truck on it, hinting to his past job as a mechanic. According to the wiki, he ran an auto repair shop with his friends. Entry 13, The Midnight Riders. The Midnight Riders are a rock band in the Left 4 Dead universe. They appear to be Coach's favorite band, as he says during the Dark Carnival campaign that he has all their albums. Ellis appears to love them as well. They're famous for their pyrotechnics during their concerts and performances, which according to Ellis, you can see from space, gets cancelled because if there's a wind, it'll start fires in nearby areas, and his eyebrows were burned off when he got the front row seating. Their current lineup prior to the outbreak were Ox, the drummer, who played drums and percussions, Smitty, the drinker, who played rhythm guitar and lead vocals, Jake, the lover, who played bass, keyboard, and backing vocals, and Dusty, the brawler, who played lead guitar and backing vocals. Past members include Riggs Donner, who played bass in the band from 1983 up to his death in 1985, and Thad Donner, his son, only during one concert in 2009 to honor his father's death and legacy. Their song Midnight Ride and One Bad Man can be heard in the final and finale of Dark Carnival and on various jukeboxes found in the campaigns. And their other songs, Save Me Some Sugar, This Won't Take Long, and All I Want for Christmas Is to Kick Your Ass, can be heard during the Passing and Sacrifice campaigns. Entry 14, The Last Stand. The Last Stand is a non-canon what-if campaign released by Valve and entirely created by the community. It's PC exclusive and not on Xbox. Originally, it was only on Versus with a single level, where the first group of survivors took a different pathway on the Death Toll campaign to a lighthouse in a survival scenario where it's guaranteed that all of them will die eventually. An update for Left 4 Dead 2, it plays regularly, and instead of all of the survivors dying, they actually manage to signal for a rescue boat and get out. Entry 15, Bill's full name. Bill is only one of the 8 main survivors whose full name we know of. Bill is just a nickname, or maybe his middle name, I don't know, as his name is William Overbeck. Entry 16, Damn It. Damn It is an unfinished campaign that was made by Turtle Rock Studios, which was supposed to tell the events that happened in between Dead Air and Blood Harvest. It would have been released with 2 standalone survival maps called Coal Freighter and High Rise. Although uncompleted, the campaign is still playable from beginning to end. However, it's missing a ton of textures, and most of the environment is low poly models and plain gray shading. Entry 17, Jimmy Gibbs Jr. Zombie. Jimmy Gibbs Jr. Zombie can sometimes appear in the finale of Dead Center's campaign in Left 4 Dead 2. He has 3,000 health, the same amount as a tank, cannot be set on fire, is immune to the lure of bile bombs and pipe bombs, and when he attacks, he leaves oil in the user's eyes, disorienting them. He'll only appear every 15 days. Entry 18, Back 4 Blood. Back 4 Blood is a game created by Turtle Rock Studios, which many people were excited was going to be a third Left 4 Dead game, or at least a spiritual successor. Unfortunately, this doesn't seem to be the case, It's drastically different, with many of the Left 4 Dead fans criticizing the false advertisement the trailer said by the creators of Left 4 Dead, and a lot of the interviews as well. When around, I believe, 10 of the former employees worked on the game. All the flaws and inconsistencies could warrant its own video, but there's many other people who have made it, and I don't really want to talk about a game that let me down this hard. It's just not Left 4 Dead. Entry 19, Suicide Blitz. This is a fan-made campaign which tells the story of 4 new survivors during the immediate aftermath of the infection's destruction. It has 3 parts and apparently centers around a bustling and busy city, where the finale ends in a football stadium. I don't have Left 4 Dead on my computer, so I can't tell what it's really like. Entry 20, some kind of AI watches you play. This is a true fact. An AI, known by the community as the AI Director, watches you play and modifies a zombie and supply spawns depending on how good or bad you're doing during your gameplay. Are you doing great and your health is still high? In comes a tank or witch, with hordes called to hinder your efforts. Are you doing bad, and all of you are in the red or low on ammo? Then the AI Director will spawn in ammo piles and first aid kits just around the corner, as well as spawn in less zombies. Entry 21, Military Holdouts/Checkpoints. This refers to the various military holdout and evac centers that can be found during the survivors' journeys into finding rescue or a safe haven. There appears to be not much left on the East Coast, the only other ones being Echo and Millhaven, Pennsylvania, and New Orleans, Louisiana. I guess even the military can become overwhelmed by the infected, despite 8 survivors and regular people traveling around half the country and kicking ass. Entry 22. Genetics determine which special infected you'll become. This theory is pretty self-explanatory, as perhaps your lifestyle and genetics determine what special infected you'd become. Like if you were a smoker, you'd become a smoker. If you were overweight, you'd become a boomer. If you were a creep, you'd become a hunter. If you were athletic, you'd become a tank or a charger. If you were crazy, you'd become a jockey. And prostitutes became spitters and witches. Entry 23. The boomer was the first special infected. This theory states that the boomer was the first special infected that mutated and formed. This is held by the fact that it's one of the first special infected introduced in the first game, and that on the first stage of the Hotel of the Dead Center campaign, in the lounge or conference room, there is an easel holding up pictures and paragraphs of and about the boomer and bile jar. Perhaps this means the boomer was indeed the first special infected, and thus was the first one to be studied and experimented on, which led to the creation of the boomer bile extract. Entry 24. Special infected mutate quickly. This theory states that people who become infected and turn into special infected do so quickly after initial exposure. One thing that points to this being true is a church guy in the Death Toll campaign of the first game. He seems just like a normal, albeit irrational man at first, until the crescendo event ends, and he can be heard turning into a special infected, either a boomer, smoker, or hunter, and will be one of those upon opening the safe room door. Another thing that points to this being the case is a time in between the 2 games where new special infected appear. In the first game it was a boomer, smoker, hunter, and of course a witch and tank, and the second game introduced a spitter, charger, and jockey. Maybe they really do mutate faster than we realize, which is why CETA and the military were so overwhelmed. Entry 25. The mall has no music and a lonesome atmosphere. This one is talking about how the mall stages in Dead Center campaign have little to no music or ambience, and generally just fill people with feelings of dread and loneliness. It's understandable, as it's dark and dreary inside. There are very few musical cues. If there are, it's super quiet, compared to the other campaigns, and all the stores and shops are shuttered and cleaned out. Not to mention all the zombies and deserted evac centers with medical equipment. It just doesn't feel like a shopping mall. They're supposed to be bustling and full of people shopping, eating, and just hanging out and having a good time, but this has completely changed during this apocalypse. Entry 26, Keith is dead. This series talking about Alice's supposed friend, Keith, which he talks about in outrageous stories, is actually real but is dead. Now whether Keith is real or not, we'll talk about later. Sometimes in the passing campaign, Alice will call his fallen survivor Keith, but will quickly realize that it's not him, which hints to him possibly being dead and one of them. More evidence hinting to Keith being real but dead are two pieces of graffiti, one in the Lighthouse of the Last Stand campaign, which reads, "My name is Keith Marshall, and I'm going to die here." The second is in the No Mercy campaign, which reads, "Keith, waited for 3 days at the meeting spot after we got separated. I can't wait anymore. Meet me at Mercy Hospital. Signed, Krista." However, I doubt this is the same Keith, as Left 4 Dead 1 takes place mostly in Pennsylvania, while Left 4 Dead 2 takes place in the Deep South, and Alice is from Georgia. Entry 27, Pills here. This is a common voice line survivors may say when they find pain pills. It's a popular meme and started with the first game, when it was mostly attributed to Lewis, as he seems to be the most excited when he finds them. Tier 2, The Slopes of the Iceberg. Entry 28, Scrapped Dead End Campaign. Now I've tried to find information about this, but there was nothing official about a scrapped campaign called Dead End, only fan-made custom campaigns, and depending on which game you're playing, either the first group or the second group, is a mixture of all the campaigns combined into one, and is a mixture of, say, like the graveyard and the lake, or the swamps, in which the first group ends up escaping through a secret bunker, and the second group ends up taking shelter in a bomb shelter. Entry 29, Bill in Dead by Daylight is canon. Behavior collaborated with Valve to put Bill in their game, with a couple others being costumes for other characters. Known as the Left Behind chapter, it took Bill into the world of Dead by Daylight right after his canonical death in The Sacrifice. It has neither been confirmed nor denied whether him being in the game is canon or not, but I'm going with not canon. Entry 30, Jimmy Gibbs Jr. never existed. I couldn't find anything related to this. Jimmy Gibbs Jr. seemed to be very real in the Left 4 Dead universe. Ellis and Coach talk about him fondly when they see his posters in the first campaign. But if I had to take a crack at it, maybe it means that Jimmy Gibbs Jr. isn't his actual name, but rather a pseudonym or alter ego the man made up for his racing career. Entry 31, You fight the same tank every time. I'm sure we all know that this one's bullshit, as it's quite clear that you don't fight the same tank every time. You literally fight 2 to 3 tanks in the finale of the campaigns, but I'll entertain it anyways. Maybe you do actually fight the same tank every single time, but the same one per campaign, and during the finale, you finally kill the one that's been stalking you and following you around and attacking you all throughout the level. Entry 32, Playable Keith. We all know who Keith is, despite being unseen and debated whether he is real or not. He's quite legendary, and unfortunately you can't play as him. You can only play him through mods, where he will usually replace one of the other survivors. Entry 33, Gas cans filled with air. Once again I tried to find information about this, but I didn't find anything about it. Perhaps it means that a lot of the gas cans have little to no gas inside them, which is why you need to find a lot of gas cans for the car in Dead Center, the generator, and the passing, and take most of it, if not all of it, and the remaining diesel for the boat in hard rain, and why none of the survivors save up the red gas cans to fuel a car to leave, because there's just not enough in them. Entry 34, Bride Witch. This is referring to the single alternate form of the witch that can be found in the passing campaign, in the park section of the first stage. The park is packed full of lawn chairs, a stage, speakers, and a radio and notably a witch dressed in a wedding gown, jewelry, veil, and her hair done. And when you startle the witch, it calls a horde of common infected that are dressed up fancily for the wedding, which was apparently ruined just as the infection got to that area. Entry 35, Sacrifice Comic Book. Valve made a comic book for the Sacrifice, which revealed some details about the infection and the status of the survivors from the first game. We'll get into a lot of those facts later, but most of the comic told the events of what happened to Bill, Zoe, Lewis, and Francis in between Blood Harvest and the Sacrifice, the climax of the Sacrifice campaign, and just after the passing, how Bill is now dead and gone, how the second group moved on their way to New Orleans with the help of Zoe, Francis, and Lewis, and how they got a boat and went on their way to Florida and found an island to call home for now. Entry 36, Millhaven. This is also referring to the Sacrifice comic, where after the survivors are rescued from the farmhouse outpost in Echo at the end of the Blood Harvest campaign, Millhaven is a secure military town outpost where they were taken to. At first they thought this place would be their new home for the foreseeable future, and for a short while it was. But then the soldiers began to experiment on them, and it's there where they found out that all 4 of them are immune and known as carriers. I said it before, they actually are infected but are asymptomatic and can spread it to others just by standing near them. I believe it was either Lewis or Francis that overheard the soldiers talking about how our group of 4 survivors had outlived their usefulness for their research and whether or not they should be executed. A little after the eavesdropping and the group were made aware of their imminent disposal, the zombies broke through the walls and barriers, overwhelming the soldiers and giving the survivors a chance to escape by sheer dumb luck. Now, although there is no place in Pennsylvania actually called Millhaven, there are 2 towns called Millvale and Allegheny County just across the river from Pittsburgh, and Millville in Columbia County, a part of the Bloomsburg-Berwick metro area. Entry 37, Fate of the Pilots. If you played through the games before, I'm sure you know that most of the pilots and rescue personnel that save you at the end of the campaigns don't survive or end up leaving you. The pilot at the end of No Mercy turns into a zombie while flying, and the survivors are forced to crash in the city, and Zoe shoots him. John and Amanda Slater rescue you at the end of Death Toll, but are missing in Dead Air. Although their fates are unknown, the dialogue in Wiki point to them getting kicked off the boat by Amanda. The pilot at the end of Dead Air is revealed to have crashed and died in the Sacrifice comic just before the events of Blood Harvest. The pilot at the end of Dark Carnival turns into a zombie and they crash land in the Mississippi swamps in Swamp Fever, where Nick apparently shot him. Virgil rescues you at the end of Swamp Fever, and he drops the group off in New Orleans 2 campaigns later, then departs to see if he can help other people. Entry 38, Charger Lambda. This is referring to the dead Charger zombie that is hung up in the village on the first stage of the Swamp Fever campaign. It is in the shape of a lambda symbol, the 11th letter of the Greek alphabet, and also the logo of one of Valve's other game series named Half-Life. Entry 39, Zoe killed her father. This is true. Before Zoe met up with the others, it was revealed that her mother got infected and bit her father, whom he killed, and Zoe, not knowing that her father was a carrier like herself, shot him in vain. Entry 40, Blight Pathway. This is referring to a fan-made, non-canon campaign that takes place after Dead Air, where the survivors are taken out of America and land in the city of Beijing, China. They find themselves on a blight pathway to try and escape. I think blight path just means that more and more zombies will appear as the trial goes on. Entry 41, Jukebox Rare Song. This is referring to the super rare song that might play if you interact with the jukebox. It's known as Still Alive, and is a song from another one of Valve's games called Portal. It can only be played in the Passing and the Parish campaigns. Entry 42, One Man Cheeseburger Apocalypse. This is referring to Coach's infamous one-liner when he says this. He will often say it when approaching a burger tank restaurant or eateries in general, calling out his hunger to the rest of the group. Although Burger Tank is fictional, according to the wiki, The real-life counterpart is Burger King. Entry 43. Wow, such gaming. This is referring to an American YouTuber who talks about many things, films, games, and especially his Why It Wouldn't Survive series. He especially loves talking about zombie-related topics and has talked about Left 4 Dead before, and it seems to be one of his favorite topics to talk about. I recommend him. You should really check him out. Entry 44. Witches cry for what reason? To lure people in, or because they remember their lives when they were alive? It's never said or revealed as to why exactly witches cry. A few theories have been put forward. Perhaps they do it to lure people in. Maybe living people will think it's a person in distress, willing to investigate and find out it's the witch, and kills them and feeds. Or maybe they are semi-conscious or sentient and remember their past lives as living women and cry because they're now monsters. Entry 45. Witches like sugar. This theory is pretty straightforward, which says that witches like sugar or sweets. This may be the reason as to why the sugar mill in Hard Rain is infested with them, because they love to eat sugar, candy, or sweet stuff. Now looking back, it also might be a reference to Hansel and Gretel, when her house is made of like candy and stuff, and then she fattens the kids up with candy. Who knows? Entry 46. Nick killed his ex-wife. Throughout the trials, when Nick hears a witch crying, he will sometimes say, "I think I hear," or "sounds like my ex-wife." At the wedding in the Park of the Passing, he may also say, "This brings back bad memories," or "It's not easy to get blood out of a wedding dress." It may be the case that before he met up with the other 3 survivors, he was with his wife, who became infected, and he had to kill her, but this is not confirmed. Entry 47. The Midnight Riders are still alive. This theory says that the Midnight Riders are still alive. Evidence of this can be found written on the walls in Dark Carnival, where it says that they were airlifted out of the amusement park to safety. In the previous campaign, The Passing, a rare event might play out if you get to the bar and pass the ditch in a certain amount of time. Their tour bus will pass by the gate. It cannot be interacted with, and there's no way to draw its attention. Now whether the Midnight Riders are actually inside is unclear, and it's not known if the bus kept driving because the occupants didn't notice a group of survivors or didn't care. Entry 48. Witch spawn in Dead Center. Mandala effect. This is referring to a certain witch spawn in Dead Center on the very first stage. People swore they remember her spawning in the hotel, but I believe she actually can't, and this memory is completely false, hence the Mandala effect status. Entry 49. Military abandoned everyone and retreated to the west coast. This theory states that after the military was outnumbered and overwhelmed by the infected, they abandoned everyone and retreated to the west coast, with very few exceptions. According to a map found in the lounge or conference room in Dead Center's first stage, all military outposts in the south and east are overwhelmed and have been abandoned, with the only exceptions being New Orleans and Echo. Millhaven is not mentioned, but it might be that the place is secretive or not official. However, no central or western coast states, cities, or outposts are shown on the map. Due to the scarcity of the military in the south, it's quite possible that either they mostly died, or really did abandon the south and east and went west to set up shelter or form new outposts, seeing that the south and east were lost causes. Entry 50. Coach's real name is what? It's pretty obvious that Coach isn't Coach's real name. If it was, that'd be pretty weird. It has never been revealed or confirmed what his real name actually is. His voice actor, Chad L. Coleman, said that he believed it was Wendell, but this hasn't been confirmed or denied by Valve. I saw someone else say it was Frank, but there isn't any evidence to support that. Sometimes during the passing, Rochelle will call him Carl, so perhaps Carl is his actual name, which he told the others about off-screen, but they still prefer to call him Coach. Entry 51. CSGO uses Left 4 Dead assets. I said it in the last tier, and this is actually true. Counter-Strike Global Offensive does indeed reuse a couple of assets from Left 4 Dead. A couple items and environmental elements and machines are ripped from the files of Left 4 Dead. Entry 52, Left4Dead411.com. This is referring to an old blog page which had the Left 4 Dead name on it, and a header with the first group of survivors. However, many of the posts were or trailed off topic from Left 4 Dead. You could still visit the site via Internet Archives, but I don't really recommend it, as the site is poorly maintained and kind of fishy. Tier 3, the surface of the water. Entry 53, Keith is the fallen survivor. I talked about this earlier, but in the passing, Ellis may mistake the fallen survivor as Keith, but shortly after realizes he isn't. You could make the argument that the fallen survivor really is him, but the fact that there are multiple fallen survivors makes this theory hard to take seriously. Entry 54, survivors rescued from closets are clones. This theory says that when a survivor dies and respawns in the closet, they're not actually the original survivor that got resurrected by divine intervention, but rather are clones. Now I've tried to find theories and information about this, but the only relevant thing I found was a creepypasta on Some Ordinary Gamers wiki, so I think this theory might just be bullshit. Entry 55, Defibrillator Soul Transfer. This theory is pretty self-explanatory. When you use a defibrillator to revive a dead survivor, you transfer a piece of your soul to revive them. Although not confirmed, it kinda makes sense since the dead survivors suffered many different types of wounds and trauma, and I really don't think an ordinary defib unit would work. Entry 56, Dark Carnival is based on true events. I've tried to find any piece of info about Dark Carnival being based on real-life events, but unfortunately I found nothing. There was something on Reddit, but the post has sadly been deleted and wasn't archived, so it cannot be viewed. Maybe it means that Whispering Oaks is a real place, which is not true, but there are a few amusement parks in Georgia, specifically around Atlanta, that could have been used as inspiration for Whispering Oaks. Someone else on GameFAQs.com said it reminded him of Six Flags New Orleans, which was destroyed in Hurricane Katrina in 2005, and the remnants of some of the rides still remain. Entry 57, The virus halts aging. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any information about this, and even if it was true, maybe instead of carriers turning into zombies, it slows down or even stops aging for them indefinitely. However, the events of the games are way too short to tell for sure. Entry 58, Jockey Malware, Linux exclusive. This is referring to a virus or Trojan horse someone apparently found on his PC version of Left 4 Dead. He did a routine virus scan using Linux with Clam, and it found a virus in the files of Left 4 Dead. He deleted the file and scanned again, but it was still there and infected. People said it might be a false positive, and even accused him of pirating the game. I'm not sure how the jockey ties in with this. Originally I thought it was about a video someone posted, where the game was seemingly breaking down and glitching. The truck at the beginning of the second stage of Dead Center had the jockey's face and textures all on the outside and inside of it. It was really freaky, and although the authenticity of the video has come into question, the video looks real, and people said it would have been hard to fake. I've had a couple of visual glitches in my own games before, so I believe this is real. Entry 59, Special Infected are actually helping you? Once again, I couldn't find anything about this, but I'll entertain it. Now if it were true, maybe it entails that the Special Infected are screaming and making noises to keep you away from them, and large hordes of common infected. Maybe they are self-aware and know what they've become, and so make these noises to try and deter you from approaching. Maybe they can't help it but to attack survivors if they see them. Entry 60, Tasty Cools. This entry is referring to a Left 4 Dead machinima anthology series created by Sape Moes on YouTube. It stars the Left 4 Dead survivors as well as characters from various other games. The main characters are Nick and Coach, Nick trying to live his life normally with Ellis, his roommate, and a psychotic Coach is revealed to be a cannibal and pursues Nick so he can eat him. I really like these series of videos. So far there's 9 in the series, the latest being uploaded March 25th, 2021. You should really check it out, they're hilarious. Entry 61, Beta and Concept Art of Survivors. There are some notable differences between the final versions of the survivors and concept arts and original models. I'll have the pictures of them on screen. Old Lewis and Francis look totally different, while Zoe and Bill look similar to their final versions. Now for the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors, they look completely unrecognizable, with the exception being Rochelle's concept. Another female character that can also be seen. Later versions of them show their clothes and hair to be slightly different. According to the wiki, Nick is the only survivor who retained his concept style to the final versions. Entry 62, White Lie. Spoiler alert. Big spoiler alert. This is referring to a series of videos created by Lone Wolf HBS, where it is a reimagining of the events of the game. It starts with Zoe and Coach, who as the time goes on go to various places to try and find safety and other survivors, and Zoe appears to be mute. As time goes on, they meet the others, and unfortunately Ellis is left behind at Bill's discretion and killed at Whispering Oaks. He and Zoe were having a romance form between them, and this event broke something in her. People began to die around them, and a super hunter was stalking them and calling hordes. At the end, when it's only Coach and Zoe left, they got separated from Nick. Zoe's revealed to be the mastermind behind it all, and the true overarching villain of White Lie. When Ellis died, she became evil, and had killed everybody else in her psychopathy and sorrow. Coach berates her, and tells her that they've been through everything together, and as he's being choked by a smoker. She finally shoots and seemingly kills him. She is found a couple days later by Nick and soldiers. Zoe and Nick are the last 2 remaining, and taken to safety. Nick is blissfully unaware about everything she's done, and he asks her if there's anyone left. She says her only spoken words of the series. Things like this never end well. As she rests on a cot in the medical tent, she thinks back to everyone, then finally Coach, whom she asked if he could hear her in the afterlife, to forgive her. Entry 63, Left 4 Dead 2 survivors in Resident Evil 6. This is referring to a DLC, downloadable content, and Resident Evil 6, which was exclusive to PC for both games. In Resident Evil 6, it added the Mercenaries No Mercy campaign mode, where they added Coach, Nick, Rochelle, and Ellis as playable characters. They also added the Witch and mini tanks as enemies. The music is also changed to the Left 4 Dead soundtracks when playing as them. And for Left 4 Dead 2, they added a new alternative look for some of the zombies and enemies. Napads as a tank, Ogromans as a charger, and Lepotika as the boomer. Entry 64, Left 4 Speed. This is referring to a parody video on YouTube, originally made by, I believe, 1ENG, when the actions by the survivors and zombies are parodied and greatly exaggerated. It's pretty funny, and you should check it out. He also made a second one for the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors, and others have made remasters of the videos with the actual models of the characters in SMF or Gary's mod. Entry 65, Messin' with the Charger. This is also referring to a fan-made video on YouTube created by Nasty Midnight Productions. The description reads, "This came from an idea a friend of ours had, and we decided to animate it. Quality took a little hit in the Vegas export, but we're happy with the results. A quick parody of the Jack Link's beef jerky commercials. Hope you enjoy. Title and logo designs by Chris Trejo, with support from Dennis Garza. Once again, I recommend checking it out. It's pretty funny." Entry 66, Left 4 Nicks. Again, this is another fan-made video on YouTube. This one was created by Lucius Zero Omega and entails 4 Nicks trying to survive through the zombies. It gets pretty chaotic as all the Nicks yell at each other and insult one another. Entry 67, Chocolate Helicopter. This is referring to the song which plays in the Left 4 Dead 2 opening sequence, which serves as its theme song. It could also mean the line of dialogue when the four are running up the stairs of the hotel in the first campaign and Coach gets tired. Nick teases him about his weight and love for food as he tries to sarcastically encourage him by saying maybe the helicopter is made of chocolate. There is also a mod where the helicopters which rescue you in Dark Carnival in the parish are turned completely into chocolate. Entry 68, Gnome Alone. This is referring to an honorary achievement in Left 4 Dead 2. According to gaming.stackexchange.com, it is described as follows. Gabe Newell partnered up with the Weta Workshop and Rocket Lab to send a 3D printed Gnome Chomsky into space for charity. The Gnome was launched on November 20th, 2020. Newell plans on donating $1 for every person who watches a video within 24 hours of the launch to the Starship Children's Hospital in Auckland, New Zealand. The space mission was followed by adding new auto-unlocking achievements named Gnome Alone to Left 4 Dead 2, Half-Life Episode 2, and Half-Life Alyx games on Steam. Entry 69. Ellis's stories. Are they true or not? And is Keith even real? This is referring to all the stories Ellis tells in the safe houses and rarely out of them when they're journeying to the next safe room. He tells outrageous stories about his Keith buddy, which I discussed in my Explaining Every Single Survivors in Left 4 Dead video. So check it out if you want to know about Keith, but if you don't feel like it, I'll summarize it for you. According to Ellis, Keith has survived many injuries that would have definitely killed a normal person, such as severe food poisoning, being run over, drowning, bombing, burning, stabbings, etc. Non-fatal stories including not recognizing his brother Paul anymore, being a runaway groom at his own wedding, being evicted, getting stuck in a sewer, using a paintball gun on a roller coaster, and so much more. On one occasion, Ellis will even mistake something he and the others did earlier in the game for something that he and Keith did, but will shortly correct himself and then say, I can't wait to tell Keith about that one. So, who exactly is Keith? And is he even real? Some kind of imaginary friend or alter ego? And are any of Ellis's stories even true, or is he full of shit? Someone asked Gabe Newell about if Keith is real, and he responded with, this entire game is fictional. That really doesn't answer the question, so whether Keith is real or entirely made up, and if any of Ellis's stories are factual, is entirely unanswered for now. Entry 70. Okay, Buddy Ellis. This is referring to a forum on the website Reddit, which Left 4 Dead shitposts are shared and talked about. Most of the posts don't really have anything to do with the gameplay, generally just a bunch of tomfuckery. Entry 71. What were they all doing before meeting each other in the apartments, Left 4 Dead 1, and hotel in Left 4 Dead 2? So what exactly were all the survivors doing before they came together as a group? It is explained for most of them in the wiki. Bill was in a hospital awaiting surgery for his leg when the doctors turned and he had to defend himself. He went back home to change into his old military clothes. Zoe had just left her parents' house after they succumbed to the green flu. Lewis was in his office building and barely escaped as his coworkers turned. It's not known what Francis was doing just before, but when it started he took part in shoplifting. It seems he got stuck in Fairfield, which is based off of the city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Bill and Francis's hometowns are unknown, but we can safely assume that Lewis and Zoe's is Fairfield or Pittsburgh. As for the second group, it's not exactly known what Nick, Ellis, or Coach were doing, but Rochelle's can easily be assumed. We know that Ellis and Coach are natives of Savannah, Georgia, and Rochelle is from Cleveland, Ohio. She worked for the news there and was most likely here with the crew trying to get a story and documenting the zombie outbreak, when they were ambushed and she was separated from them and was forced to leave them behind. Nick's actions before the hotel meetup in his hometown are completely unknown. It's possible that both groups just found each other by pure chance, or they were told by the military to head to the nearest evacuation points, but arrived too late, so they had to team up and prepare to defend themselves until they found a safe haven. Entry 72. Crazy Dave is in Left 4 Dead and connected to Virgil? This theory states that Crazy Dave, the merchant and neighbor from Plants vs. Zombies, exists in Left 4 Dead, and even that the two games are in the same universe. A piece of graffiti in the Under the River Tour part of the passing campaign states, "Looking for an M60? Come see me." Signed, Crazy Dave. Perhaps in this universe he sells high caliber and powerful guns, rather than plants and gardening things. I'm not sure how he is connected to Virgil, and I couldn't find any information about that. And the two characters don't share the same voice actor either. Entry 73. Every zombie game and movie starts in Georgia. This is referring to how a lot of zombie-related media takes place in Georgia, and it is used to film a lot of places and for said media. For one, they have a thing called the Georgia Entertainment Industry Investment Act, which makes it cheaper to film there than Hollywood. Another thing is that Atlanta is home to the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, so that could be used as a plot device for most viral zombie movies, shows, games, etc. Entry 74. Kills and shots on people's graves in the parish turned them into zombies. This theory states that the pills and adrenaline shots that are found in the parish graveyard stage turned people into zombies. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any information about this, and it also doesn't explain why the items are there in the first place, and still completely usable. Also, why the survivors don't turn into zombies themselves when they use it. It could be because they're immune, but this theory is definitely untrue. Entry 75. Other groups of survivors. Throughout the levels of Left 4 Dead 1, distant gunshots and artillery fire can be heard, and in both games, supplies scattered around the levels in safe houses like sleeping bags, grills, and used cans of food and drinks can be found. Not to mention all the graffiti that can be read in the safe houses and throughout the levels. The most prominent unseen group calls themselves the Angels of Death. They make themselves known through the graffiti and apparently have 7 members, then recruit an 8th member by the next time their graffiti is seen. Their names are Brenda, Jerry, Chris, Phil, Sean, Brock, and Jason, and the new 8th member, Jaime. They have tally marks on how many zombies they've killed. There was a possible 9th member, as above the first piece of graffiti, there was a cracked heart with the name Teresa above, so perhaps she was also a member, but left them or died. Entry 76. Whitaker wanted you all to die. This theory states that Whitaker, the gun shop owner in the Dead Center campaign, didn't actually want to help you get to the mall, but wanted you all to die in the grocery store for raiding and trashing his shop. This actually is a good theory. Whitaker didn't know that there would be cola in the store, and in fact, it was almost entirely cleaned out. So if it turned out that there was no soda in there, he would have used that as an excuse to let the survivors get overwhelmed by the infected and die, as revenge for stealing from his shop. He also answers sarcastically sometimes after opening the door for you to go to the store, to hurry up before he revokes his offer, and how they're lazy and slow with his order. And when he tells the survivors good luck after he blows up the semi-truck, it sounds insincere or not genuine. What dampens this theory is that they got the cola for him and he helped them anyway, so perhaps he isn't as malicious as his theory makes it seem. Entry 77. Francis and Nick know each other. This theory states that Nick and Francis actually know each other, personally or just heard of one another. It actually might be true. Francis is a part of the biker gang Hell's Legion, in which he has tattoos on his arms of their insignias. A lesser known fact is that Nick also has one of the insignias on one of his rings, which match the one that on Francis's right arm. Perhaps they truly are a part of the same gang and knew each other in the past. Although they insult each other and seem to hate each other at the beginning of the passing campaign, when they meet again or at the finale, They may call each other brother or bro. Obviously, they're not siblings, but they finally recognize each other and the symbol on Francis's arm and Nick's ring, so have a mutual respect for one another. Entry 78. So many zombies are here because people thought the green flu was fake. This theory details a possible reason as to why the green flu spread so fast, because people believed it was all a hoax, so didn't take necessary precautions to protect from the infection. When the masses found out it was indeed real, it was already too late, and the infection spread like a giant wildfire. Not to mention that at first, nobody knew who was immune as carriers or not. An interesting theory overall, but still just a theory. Entry 79. Dead Center Internal Plexus. This is referring to how the mall interior and the campaign itself of All of Dead Center seems a lot bigger than the outside shows and the view of the city at the hotel rooftop. To me, it's just your personal perception, especially since you also use the back halls of the mall, which usually employees only use, instead of just the shops. Also, the atrium at the end of the campaign, which is a large area and appears to be another entrance to the mall, which you obviously can't see from the other side of the building when entering, since the road is blocked off with tarps and fences.